Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of those upset alerts from around the country. Texas and Ohio State have some answers to give, no doubt about that. Texas going into a bye week, which makes you feel a little bit better. Ohio State, you head right over to State College to play maybe the biggest game of the season. So it's going to be a lot of interesting stuff happening over the next little bit for those teams, and we'll see if they can continue to stave off elimination and stay in the CFP hunt. But let's get to all the other ranked matchups, because there were quite a few and some big-time takeaways from some of these games, and the biggest one was probably from this one. Oregon just went to work. It was one of those games that a lot of people, including myself, pegged as one of those that just the slightest bit sketchy. You know, that game against Purdue last week, a lot of people talked about that one as a dangerous game for them. The reality was, it probably wasn't all that dangerous. Just the Big Ten and all of the different things that have happened over the years around that university, around that stadium, have made us a little bit nervous about those games. But this was the one that could have gotten a little bit sketchy for them, and it was never in doubt. They absolutely dominated from start to finish. And the big thing for me, as you've seen Oregon go on throughout this season, the things that we worried about early on in the season have become strength for this team. The O-line that was without Matthew Bedford to start the season is dominating teams in every single way. If you saw the score by Tez Johnson late in that game, I don't know how much time Dylan Gabriel had, but it looked like he could have set up, had a 5-course dinner, and then made the pass for a touchdown. It was absolutely incredible, the protection that he had on that play. And overall, on the defense, you forced 2 INTs on a guy that rarely missteps. They've been doing really, really good on the back end of that defense. That was another worry of mine. With a lot of new transfer guys coming in, you never really know how it's going to land. Didn't necessarily work all that pretty in the first part of the season. They're really finding themselves, and it's been really impressive to watch. The Illinois story does kind of come to an end. I think 10-2 probably still gets you a seat at the table. A loss to Penn State, or at Penn State and at Oregon, shouldn't disqualify you, but I mean, you look at all the log jams around the conferences around the country, it's hard to say that it wouldn't. It's one of those things that we're getting deeper and deeper into the season, and people just keep winning. BYU keeps winning. Iowa State keeps winning, and you keep having a lot of teams that, hypothetically, an Illinois team shouldn't be out of it. They're probably out of it. 10-2 is one of those. It's pretty much becoming the moniker for the CFP or for not the CFP, and it's going to be interesting to watch the rest of the way, no doubt about that. But a huge performance from Oregon kind of proves that they are the number one team in the country. While a lot of teams out there were struggling, they were taking care of business, and a Big Ten berth almost looks like a certainty at this point. They got Michigan this upcoming weekend, so we'll see what happens there. But as of right now, this very much looks like the team that is setting the pace in the country, and very much looks like the team that is going to win that Big Ten title. But Penn State's going to have plenty to say about that. And this was a very, very weird game, because another team that just found a way to win under really, really bad circumstances, because Drew Aller, I don't really know what happened to him. Been very, very hush-hush about his status going forward and what will happen this upcoming weekend, which is pretty much the decider of how I go in that game. If I'm being totally honest, if Drew Aller's on the field, I might just lean towards Penn State. If he's not on the field, I definitely do not lean towards Penn State. But Bo Pribula deserves a ton of respect for what he did in this game. 11 for 13, 98 yards, 1 touchdown, just huge for a backup quarterback coming into a place where it is not easy to play. You know, there's a ton of different things you can take away from this game, and I get being worried about the slow starts for this Penn State team, something that I'm very worried about as they head on to the rest of the season. But you're playing in Madison. It's very, very tough. You're playing against a defense that is very good at pinning people in and not giving up those big-time plays. It was I don't want to say a certainty, but definitely a very real reality that they were going to be struggling at halftime and then had to find themselves in the second half. And that's exactly what happened. They just had to do it with a backup quarterback. And I think the biggest thing for me was the defense was really, really incredible. And now, obviously, you're going to have to face some big-time guys in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see what happens when they face Ohio State receivers. But this back end, this entire defense is just as athletic as there is in the country. They fly around the field. They make plays all over the place. And when you have Abdul Carter on the front end, when you have a lot of the guys in the middle that are just incredible, and then you have guys like Jalen Wright on the back end, it's going to be a problem to get anything going against this Penn State defense. So we'll see what happens. I think they need Drew Aller to beat Ohio State. I think they need to be able to push the ball downfield, and let's just be totally honest, they're not going to worry about that if Drew Aller's not in that game. So something that's going to have to be talked about the rest of the week, and we'll definitely keep you updated as more information comes out. But at the end of the day, a huge win under some not great circumstances. definitely one that Penn State badly needed, and they made it look pretty good. Even after a first half that was fairly ugly and a backup quarterback coming in, they were able to get a double-digit win. Huge win for them, and definitely one that makes me feel a lot better about having them at number 3, at least in my rankings going forward. And then you got Miami. They finally got the one that they needed. They finally got the one where they were able to roll in, run the football, get a 2-3 touchdown win, and just get out of town. That was the ultimate goal for this game. Now, they didn't have to get out of town, to be fair. They were in Coral Gables, but at the end of the day, they were able to get a win that has been really, really hard to come by for them, which is just a comfortable one that makes sense, one that you don't have to stretch too much in, one that you don't have to have Cam Ward be a superhero in. When you have 40 carries for 130 yards is a huge sign for them going forward. Obviously, not necessarily, the dominating performance on the ground that you absolutely could have had, but the reality is you don't need a lot. When you have Cam Ward in the backside, you do not need a ton from that run game. You just need enough, and they were able to get it. Damian Martinez was absolutely incredible in this game, and they were able to do a ton of the stuff that they needed to do early on in the season, and they're going to need to be able to do the rest of the way if they're going to want to avoid any disaster the rest of the way. But Florida State falls to 1-7, fully out of contention for bowl eligibility, and it's one of the weirdest, one of the worst and craziest downturns that I've ever seen in college football. And I understand with the transfer portal, it adds a lot of more variability here, but this is pretty remarkable. This team is just downright bad. After a year where they just went undefeated and returned quite a few guys on the defensive side of the ball. They're just terrible. It's pretty remarkable to watch every single week because at some point you think maybe they'll turn a corner, maybe they'll be able to figure it out, and then they put up a performance like this. Just absolutely terrible. Now, Luke Kromenhoek did get into the game just a little bit. Maybe that's just a consolation prize at the very least for Florida State fans going forward. But another big-time game that Vegas was just wrong about this one, and I bought in like an idiot. But at the end of the day, BYU gets a huge win over UCF by 13, 37-24, and this was really remarkably dominant from this team, pretty much from start to finish. UCF had to move to their third quarterback on the year, Dylan Risk, who played pretty well, 6 for 10, 102 yards, and a touchdown this game, including a touchdown on the ground. Did really good stuff, but at the end of the season, it's a lost cause. So maybe it's a better sign for the future for that program, but they've been all over the place pretty much from the jump this season, and it did not get any prettier in this game. BYU just continues to do everything. It's one of those teams that I just, for the life of me, cannot figure out because early on in the season, you're talking about this incredible story and they're going about business and they're doing really incredible things and you're thinking, yeah, it's awesome. But you look at the turnover battles and you look at a couple of the 50-50 plays and you look at a couple of the bounce a ball type plays and they're all going BYU's direction. And you're thinking, okay, at some point they're going to find their way back down to earth. At some point they're going to be able to, not win the turnover possession and lose a game and things kind of go haywire. That just hasn't happened. This team just executes at a ridiculously high level. Jake Retzlaff was nearly perfect in this one. They got 250 on the ground, and they did what they tend to do, which is win the turnover battle. It's been absolutely incredible to watch. But at the end of the day, one of those teams that, like Anthony is saying here, they're not getting a lot of respect. And yes, I do think a lot of it is because they play in the Big 12. And it's really hard to get a beat on how good the Big 12 is. You can look around and say there's a lot of good teams. That's why they're battling out at the top. You can also say there's a lot of subpar teams, and that's why they're battling out at the top. So it's really hard to get a beat on the Big 12. The reality is BYU is playing really good football, and BYU is handling the business that's in front of them, and that is all you can ask a team to do. So they're doing something that I never even remotely thought they were capable of doing. And now you look forward the rest of the way. They got Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, and Houston. They should be an undefeated team. If they're able to handle business in those, and we've talked about the Big 12, that is not necessarily a guarantee by any means, but they're handling business in a way that I didn't think they were going to be able to do this late in the season. I'll be totally honest. I thought the luck was going to catch up to them, and it hasn't quite yet. And they're starting to win games with a little bit less luck every single time. So really remarkable stuff from this team. Cannot say enough about what they've been able to do up there, and you got to keep moving forward. You got 4 games that you should be able to win, but in the Big 12, there's a lot of shoulds, and there's a lot of teams that don't end up following through on that should. So we'll see what happens in that one, but a huge win. They continue to move forward. Another team that was undefeated going into this week with a little bit of worry in their heart was Indiana, And man, did they handle business. There was a couple of moments in this one where you felt like it could get a little bit sketchy, and then Indiana would just respond. And not enough can be said about Taven Jackson in this game, because obviously there's not necessarily it's not necessarily a light the scoreboard on fire by any means. 11 for 19, 124 yards, a touchdown, and one pick was not perfect. At the end of the day, if that's what you're getting, and you're getting the run game and the defense that they've been getting the last couple of weeks, they're going to be more than fine. Even with against Michigan State this upcoming weekend, we'll see what happens with the quarterback battle around there. But at the end of the day, I think there's so many things about this Indiana team to love, and they're one of those teams that they're going to just grind you to dust, and that's exactly what they did in this game. They had 52 rushes. They had drives of 19, 14, and 12 plays in this game. That's the formula. When you're not playing with Curtis Rourke, when you don't have that downfield passing threat the way that you used to, you're going to have to be able to run the ball, and that's exactly what they did in this game. It wasn't necessarily prolific. It was just enough to keep those chains moving, to wear this defense down and play a really good game. And then on the other side, D'Angelo Pons, man, the dude's 5'9", undersized, should not necessarily be a guy that's tearing up the Big Ten, and he is dominating the Big Ten. He made two just ridiculous plays in this game, had a pick six that is kind of a dream, I feel like, for all of us. You just run, they throw the ball right to you, and you're off to the races. But at the end of the day, it was absolutely remarkable to watch this team, and really good stuff from this team. They have another one against Michigan State this upcoming without Nathan Rourke likely. We'll see what happens throughout the week, but they're very much still on track for 11 wins. Maybe even 12 wins with the holes that Ohio State is showing. But let me answer Anthony right here. When it comes to analyzing conferences, I wish there was a little outside person without bias. Absolutely. It's a very, very tough thing to do. And I've been fairly vocal on here saying I do believe the SEC and the Big Ten are the best conferences in the country. I feel like they play the best football. They put the most guys in the NFL. I also feel like we put way too much energy in that direction, and way too much energy, more importantly, I think, in just the way we thought about a team before they go into the season. And I've been trying to kind of rewire my brain throughout this year to go away from that a little bit more, but it's definitely a tough thing to do. They're going to have to figure that out one way or the other, because it is going to keep some teams out of the CFP that probably should be there because they play in the Big 12 or because they play in the ACC, because there's just this preconceived notion that, well, it's the SEC, they're better. And a lot of the cases, that is true. But on the other side of things, there's a lot of teams that are just deserving and very capable of playing at that level that are probably going to be left by the wayside. So definitely something to watch there. And then, Anthony, are there any other top 25 teams from the Big 10? Because that's what I think that's the interesting question with Indiana, right? They haven't necessarily played that team, that one that is going to be able to test you, that one that really kind of proves you've taken that full next step. Obviously, what they're doing has been remarkable, and a lot of different games that could have gone awry have not for this team. But at the end of the day, that game against Ohio State is the one that they're probably going to be measured against. You lose that one by 20 points. A lot of this incredible story, a lot of this, grandiose ideas, I suppose, around Indiana will probably go away pretty quickly. But as of right now, playing really good football, moving forward, doing exactly what you want to do, and then you got a huge game that happened on Friday, all the way back on Friday, which feels like it was ages ago, but Boise State gets a huge, huge win, puts themselves in the driver's seat for that CFP spot from the G5, especially with Notre Dame's win this past weekend, and it was Ashton Jeanty on an off day, 128 yards and a touchdown. I don't know how this guy does it. I still think he is very much at the top of the Heisman race, along with Travis Hunter, and we'll talk about him in the next segment, I can promise you that. But a missed opportunity from UNLV here. The Mountain West is still very much in reach, and you could very well be the team that spoils Boise State's fun at the end of the year if you get back to that Mountain West title and are able to get that win. But at the end of the day, a tough loss for them. Boise State continues to move on and seems to be the team to beat going forward in the G5 race for the CFP. And then you got this one. This one was the slightest bit sketchy for Ole Miss early. Jackson Arnold was actually able to put together good offensive drives for Oklahoma, which feels like an oxymoron. But at the end of the day, they were able to get a couple of touchdowns early in this first half, and then Ole Miss kind of just handled business. Now, the problem with Ole Miss is This is another physical team, another team that caused problems for you on offense, and cannot happen. You had 69 yards rushing in this game. If you get that against UGA or even Arkansas this upcoming weekend, it won't be enough, and you will lose that game, and you'll be sitting there trying to figure out if you're going to go 8-4, 9-3, 7-5. You're in a very weird spot going forward, but if this is the team that is going to be able to hurt you offensively, then Arkansas is going to be able to get to you a little bit, and Georgia is definitely going to be able to get to you, and you need to win both those games. So this team is still very much flawed to me. I think you're looking at another 9-3 season for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss here, and frankly, unless they fix a lot of the things on their table right now, it could get ugly in that Georgia game. But at the end of the day, still plenty to play for. You get the win. You keep moving forward. You're still in the CFP hunt, but you got one coming up against Georgia that if you play this level of football, it's going to get ugly in a hurry. But let's get to our last break here because we are running just a little bit long here. But let's get to our last break, and then we'll break down all the other games, the ones that we hadn't had a chance to get to throughout the first parts of the show. Texas Tech kind of falls out of the Big 12 race. We had Colorado send a big-time statement to pretty much everyone around the country. So I'll break it down right after this, so stick with us.